Hello! I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is my Tropical Readathon TBR, and this is a month-long readathon during March, hosted by Gen Reviews and Book Rob 13. There are teams with this one, and I've registered as Team Contemporary, Literary, and Historical Fiction. So there are prompts and challenges that are based on common tropes in books, as well as some team challenges that all add up for points, and I am basically screwed because I think it's 15 or 16 books that you would theoretically be reading, since you can't double, triple, or quadruple dip with books. So there's just absolutely no way I can manage that, but I'm gonna give it a good old college try and see how I do. But why don't we just dive right into the books? Okay, so for the absent or dead parent trope, I've selected Wakenhyrst by Michelle Paver, which was a book that I got for my birthday back in January. In this, I believe the main character's mother is dead, and so she's living with her very strict father in this Edwardian manor. It is a gothic novel that supposedly deals with witchcraft and legends, which I believe all stem from the discovery of this medieval devil drawing somewhere on the property. I don't know much more than that. I am intrigued though, and I do think the cover is quite stunning, so that's what I'll be reading for that prompt. The next prompt is war setting, and I couldn't decide, so I actually have two options here. And the first is Atonement by Ian McEwan, and this is a book that is set in World War II. I feel like everyone knows this movie starring Keira Knightley. Can anyone forget that library scene with the green dress? I think not, but I've actually never read the book itself, and this is supposed to be one of Ian McEwan's best books. I believe it was up for a Man Booker when it was originally released, and it is about this young character who makes a half-innocent mistake, is how they describe it, that ends up ruining lives. And I'm just intrigued to know how this differs from the movie itself. So this is one option for the war setting prompt. And then the other is Pat Barker's Regeneration. Now, Pat Barker is the author of The Silence of the Girls, which was the feminist retelling of the Iliad that I fell in love with last year. And this is the first book in her World War I trilogy that was also up for, I believe, a Man Booker when it was written, I think in the early 90s. And so I'm also very intrigued by this one. I do believe this is going to have some anti-war undertones, because from what I gather, the main character is a psychiatrist who is treating soldiers and supposed to send them back to the front, and he starts having misgivings about sending them back into the trenches. So I'm intrigued to hear that perspective in a book, because that's not something that I've often come across, no matter how much war setting based fiction I do read. So that is another contender there. The next trope is small towns, and to be honest, I don't read a ton in the traditional small town setting. So I chose one that has a remote location, which would lend itself to also being a very small town or village, and I chose The Glass Woman by Carolyn Lee, with this stunning cover that should just be framed, in my opinion. It's billed as being Jane Eyre meets Rebecca in an Icelandic setting, and is set in the 17th century. This young woman marries and goes with her husband to his remote village in Iceland, where she has to face the secrets behind his first wife's death. So it does sound a lot like Rebecca from just that synopsis. I'm intrigued, but this book has been on my TBR for way too long, so I would love to get around to it this month. The next trope and prompt is a coming-of-age story, and for that I selected this behemoth, The Revolution of Marina M. by Janet Finch, which was also on my winter TBR. So again, I would really like to get this one done and dusted. It is set during the Russian Revolution in 1917 and is the coming-of-age story of the titular character Marina, who is born into genteel society and ends up getting swept up into the revolutionary fervor of the time. And so I'm very excited about this because I love Russian history, as anyone who watches my channel knows by now, and it just sounds really good. I've also heard that there is a sequel to this coming out, I think later this year, so I would really like to read this and hopefully fall in love with it and then read that one as well. So, coming of age story, Marina M, coming right at you. So, the next challenge, I've opted to go with the alternate one, which is to read a book that someone else chooses for you. So I don't know what book I'm going to be reading for that yet, because I don't know who I'm trusting to pick a book for me yet. So once I figure that out, I will let you know. The next challenge, I've opted for the alternate, which is to read a book written before 2000. And for that, I've dusted off one of the modern classics that has been on my TBR for far too long. And I chose My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, which was written in 1951. Now, I adore Rebecca as a novel. I've reread it several times, and I do think that this is going to be comparable in style and tone. It's another gothic novel, and I believe it can be classified as a romantic suspense. In it, the main character is this young man who has recently lost his older cousin, who basically raised him as a son and who has made him his heir. And now, after his cousin's death, he finds out that his cousin had married while he was abroad and basically on his deathbed. So this main character has to decide whether Rachel has been a good wife to his now deceased cousin, or if she was the one who led to his demise. So there's a lot of tension and conflict there. I'm excited to see how this compares to Rebecca, and we'll report back. So the next prompt is also an alternate for me, and that is to listen to an audiobook. And again, I have two choices. So the first is a biography, and it is The Real Wallace Simpson by Anna Pasternak. And this is a biography on Wallace Simpson, the American divorcee that King Edward of England abdicated the throne for. And it was a huge scandal at the time. I have honestly always been fascinated in Wallace Simpson because I grew up hearing about the scandal of their love affair from both my mother and my grandmother. So the fact that there is a biography that I can sink my teeth into, I'm super excited about it. So that is option one. The other option for this prompt is The Woman Before Wallace by Bryn Turnbull, which is about the Viscountess that the then Prince Edward had an affair with before he had met Wallace Simpson. I was really looking for sort of a breezy type of read for the audiobook, so I was looking for a romance or maybe a cozy mystery, but this one with its cover really spoke to me, so I'm excited to potentially read this as well. And even if I don't get to it during March, I would really like to get to it at some point because it does sound particularly interesting and up my alley. Then there's a prompt that I am just skipping, and that is to read a book with AI or to read an ebook as the alternate. And to be honest, anything with AI tends to be a little bit too speculative for me, and I just know personally that I'm not going to like it. Speculative fiction tends to give me hives in most cases, so I just know that's not a book that would hold any interest for me. And then as for ebooks, I just don't like the experience of reading an ebook. I never have. I've had multiple e-readers over the years and just never used them for that purpose. So this is just not a prompt that I would be able to satisfy, unfortunately. The next challenge is boarding schools, and again, I have 2 books to choose from because I was being indecisive when I was putting together this TBR, apparently. But the first one is Abigail by Magda Szabo, which is a work of fiction that is translated from Hungarian. I've read one of Magda Szabo's other books, The Door, and absolutely fell in love with her as a writer, but this is actually supposed to be her book that is most popular in her native Hungary, and the main character is this young girl who is sent off to a boarding school and really doesn't see eye to eye with the very strict institution, which I believe is also quite religious, and so she has issues there. But there is a legend at this boarding school that if you leave a note with the statue of Abigail on the grounds, that help will be on the way. And so I'm intrigued to see what happens here. I'm thinking there's a little bit of magical realism, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but I am looking forward to reading this one. So the other book that I could potentially read for this prompt is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, and the book has 2 sort of time periods and storylines. The first is set at the school where these 2 students are obsessed with each other and this author when they are found dead under very mysterious circumstances, and then 100 years later this other writer has decided to pen a queer and feminist history on this boarding school. So it is supposed to be another Gothic novel, and I'm very excited to potentially read this one. It is a rather large book, but since you get points for the number of pages you read for this readathon, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So for the next prompt, I also chose the alternate, which is to read a book that you previously DNFed. And for that, I chose Carol, also known as The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith. And I DNFed this book a few years ago now when I was in this really bad reading slump where I started dozens of books and never finished any of them, not necessarily because I wasn't enjoying it, but just because I was in this funk. And so I really want to read this. I really love the movie and think it's beautifully done, so reading the book has been on my to-do list for some time. As far as LGBTQ literature goes, I know this is up there in influence with Giovanni's Room. It was considered groundbreaking at the time when it was written in the 50s. It is about the relationship of these 2 women, and the ending was quite a big deal back then. How it ends was uncommon in this type of story. So I'm intrigued to actually read the book when I thought so highly of the movie when it came out several years ago. So that's my choice for that. For the next challenge, I've also gone with the alternate, which is to read a book with multiple characters of color, and I have chosen How to Love a Jamaican by Alexia Arthur, which is a short story collection, and it is about Jamaican immigrants and their families back home. And this has been high on my TBR for a while because my family is Jamaican, and I feel like the stories here are going to resonate with me on a whole other level that I'm very excited about, and also it's a book that fulfills one of the Reading Women Challenge prompts, so it serves dual purposes, but I'm really excited about this and hope to get around to it for the TROPE-ICAL Readathon too. Going with another alternate prompt, I've selected the read a book in a genre that you don't usually read, and I've selected Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, which was recommended to me by my friend Liz. This is a YA novel, and if you watch my channel, you know that I don't read a lot of YA, but my friend spoke really, really highly about this. The main character visits Iran for the first time and forms a friendship with this boy next door character. From what I remember Liz telling me, it also deals with themes of depression, and she just said it was beautifully written and a stunning debut, so I'm going to take her word for it and read this month. For the last of the common challenges, I have a book picked for the Retelling Trope and another for the alternate, which is to read a book that has been adapted for the screen. And for the Retelling Trope, I've selected Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, which is the story of the mad woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. So I believe it is telling some of that story again through the eyes of this character. So that's why I've chosen this one. It's been on my TBR for way too long, and it's, to be honest, not a very long book. So I feel like this is an easy one to get around to. As for the book that was adapted to TV or film, I've chosen Sarah Waters' Tipping the Velvet, which was on my 5-star prediction video. I have loved all of the Sarah Waters books that I have read to date, and I don't think that this will be an exception. This is set during the 19th century, and this oyster girl, which I don't know what that is, falls in love with a male impersonator. I am honestly here for whatever plot twist Sarah Waters throws at me, for the build of the atmosphere, for the LGBTQ relationship that seems to be the basis of this story as well. So I will report back. I do think this one will be amazing though, because Sarah Waters has yet to disappoint me. And lastly is one of the team challenges, which is to read a book with a historical figure. And so I've chosen another book that was on my 5-star prediction list, and that is Catherine by Anya Seton, which is about the historical character Catherine Swynford, who has an affair with John of Gaunt in the 13th century, I believe. So it's supposed to be this epic medieval type romance. And Anya Seton is one of these early historical fiction writers that apparently people like Alison Ware refer to and are inspired by. So I think this will be absolutely stunning and might be one of the first books that I read for the month. And that's it. That very large stack of books are the books that I am hoping to get to for the TROPE-ICAL Readathon. As I said, I am 100% positive that I will not get to all of them, but I'm certainly going to try my damnedest, because there are some books on this list that I am very, very, very excited about reading. If you're taking part in TROPE-ICAL, please let me know, and let me know which books you're most excited about reading for it. And as always, thank you so much for watching my video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.